down about this sort of a slide. And people ask me all the time, well, why would you let your children do this? Well, I mean, really, exactly. Talk about multitasking. Well, first of all, when have we ever really let our kids do anything? You know, we let them do things, but they're going to try to find ways to do the things that they want to do, right? So Dennis says, why wouldn't let your kids do this? That is actually the answer. That's the right answer. The truth of this is, if this was available, that's right, Alan, close your email right now. She's not sitting in a classroom. She is, she's sitting actually in our bedroom playing on the Xbox 360 in the house there, right? So she's not sitting in a classroom. She's doing this. Now, Deb just brought up something about Farmville. Okay, so we're going to talk about that in a minute. Adults mini multitask all the time, but our children do this more than we ever do. In fact, if you watch kids that text and do these sorts of things, they will text their friends more than they will speak to them on the phone. And so the question is, some of the fear that exists out there is, well, our children are becoming less social. They are not communicating as well. They lack face-to-face time with their peer group, which is totally ridiculous because even with all this stuff, people still want to be there, right, and be in front of their faces. The reality is, if we had these tools when we were kids, we'd use them too. What they're doing is they're becoming efficient. They're understanding that there are times when I can't spend 20 minutes on the phone. It's better to shoot a quick text over to someone to let them know where they are. They're using it for coordination. They're using it for outreach. They're using these different mediums for different things. They are thinking in multiple vertices in ways that we never had the opportunity to do when we were children. What is going to come out of this is yet to be seen, but we're already starting to see the first inklings of this, and they are overwhelmingly positive. Right? Now, with anything, we can abuse them. Of course, absolutely, they can be abused. But that is the same with any piece of technology. Just because there is the opportunity to abuse it doesn't mean we should shy away. Right? It means we need to learn how to use them to their best effect. To that point, here are 3 slides that talk about games in society. Let's see. What about the latest studies that suggest when we multitask, we do nothing exceptionally well? So that is actually a good one, Gene, and let me go ahead and address that right now. Responding a quick message to somebody doesn't require us to do it exceptionally well. Sometimes a message to say, I'm late, I'll be there in 5 minutes, is enough to suffice without having to get on the phone and be apologetic and to understand the temperature of the room and these sorts of things. When things are, schools are boring our children. Absolutely, Gene. That's absolutely true. So it says we don't do anything exceptionally well. When it is time for us to do those things exceptionally well, we tend to cordon ourselves off from these things. And it's part of learning how to use those tools to their best effect, learning how to go ahead and step away from them to do the things that are required for us to do very, very well. And one can argue that we are at a pinnacle in human history where we have better access to technology, to medicine, to information, to creativity than really at any other point. So just because those tools are available to us to provide that multitasking doesn't mean that we use them all the time, especially when other things demand our attention. It comes down to restraint, and it comes down to understanding, again, best use case for it. Who's doing email? Why are they participating in this? Why is school boring our kids? Well, the school is boring our children. There's a really interesting thing that's going on as well with another gentleman who is in the games industry. A gentleman by the name of Jeff Braun founded a little company with a guy you may have heard of called Will Wright. And they founded a company called Maxis and created a set of games called SimCity and then The Sims and all this sort of stuff. So Jeff and I were on the phone about 1.5 years ago, and we were talking about the problem with education in the U.S. with regard to mathematics and science. Now, it hasn't helped that for quite a period of time. We've been living in a bit of a vacuum with regard to sciences and technology. I'm glad to see that we are really going after STEM programs again. I'm a big believer that mathematics and sciences are absolutely critical to the success of our children in school. I tell my daughter all the time who's going through pre-algebra, and as you all know, it can be daunting. It is, I keep telling you, it is the language. It is the language to higher education. Without algebra, you cannot excel in chemistry and biology and architecture, and you want to get into medicine, these sorts of things. These are the foundation pieces, right? But what we found when looking at some of the studies, let's see, they're getting used to the draft mode and all their communications. They're losing the notion of a finished product. Now they submit their papers with not only too many orthographic mistakes, but with unfinished, unclear ideas. Okay, Jeff, we're going to take that up during the question and answer session because I would have to say that I disagree with it. And the reason that, no, I'm not saying that I'm disagreeing with your use case or your particular case where you're observing this. What I'm saying is that, by and large, I don't believe that is happening if we look at the correct way. The example that I want to give is this. If you talk to most math teachers, I'm sure we have some here that are listening, we can kind of say we can pinpoint the downfall of mathematics in the U.S. with our students when we introduced the calculator to the classroom. We allowed the calculator to come into the classroom is when we started to see the declination in proficiency in mathematics. And that may very well be true, but the blame does not lie with the calculator. Okay, the blame lies in the fact that we did not change the material to use the calculator as a tool. We did not change the way it is being taught. We didn't include the calculator, use it to its best effect. Instead, we allowed it to sit there as a crutch. And as a result, by allowing this sort of thing to occur, we have harmed in some ways certain generations with regard to mathematics because they rely on the calculator as a crutch. It is about looking at how we use those tools to their best effect. We can use them for good or bad, right? Let's see. So that's a quick one, okay, and I'm going to kind of rip through these quick because I want to get to some question and answers for you. So here, these three slides, interwoven. We have Katie Moore, who takes home $50,000 at the Lucky Gold Star U.S. National Texting Champion. She's 15 years old, averages 14,000 text messages a month with bills under 300 pages long. And she beat over 250,000 texters for $50,000 in cash and a scholarship. Right? You look at the next picture there, Hope Lab, where this company creates a game called Remission that is proving clinically to help children with cancer understand why they need to do certain things with their treatment and the importance of taking their medication on time. And they're absolutely showing this thing like deep breathing. Why is deep breathing important? Well, because we have to be able to lower our heart rate, increase oxygen intake to allow more medicine to have absorption into the bloodstream and therefore be productive in the body. These are things I didn't know, but when I had the chance to play Remission through a game, because it was a fun game in its own right, I was much more receptive and open to this and was able to understand this very particular piece of important information. And what they're showing is that, again, with kids that are cancer patients, it's having an incredibly positive effect on their treatment. Then we look at World of Warcraft. When the swine flu broke out, pathologists went and looked at the World of Warcraft because in World of Warcraft there was a pandemic that occurred called the corrupted blood pandemic. And what happened was this corrupted blood virus was released into the world as part of the gameplay framework, but it wasn't cordoned off, and they didn't think it would actually transfer out as an attribute of the character when they left this one play area. So what happened was these infected characters left this one particular region of the world, went into the rest of the world, and started infecting players, and it created a pandemic. And so what happened is researchers, when the swine flu broke out, went and looked and said, how did people behave in the game when a pandemic hit? And you know what they found? It was an exact mirror of the way we operated in the real world. So we are seeing the further blending of these technology platforms, of information, of gameplay, of this kind of structured of communication medium in ways that we've never really examined before. We're seeing it from everything, again, from studying pandemics to kids winning scholarship money, texting, right? Somebody brought up Farmville. My wife is not a gamer. Okay, even though she's broken a Palm Pilot because she played too much Acid Solitaire on it and broke it. And that's her farm in Farmville. So who was the one that posted something about Farmville before? That was Deb. So, yeah. So my wife, the non-gamer, has this amazingly large farm, I think, and she doesn't even know it. Exactly right. I would say right now that it's gotten to the point, and the most fevered pitch, she would play more Farmville than I would all games in aggregate in a single week. Right? And why? Well, it's a cute thing to play. Actually, if you look at it from a gameplay mechanic, and this is thing that drives me crazy as a game guy and as somebody who works with the games industry, is that it is the worst part of online massive multiplayer games. It's nothing but grinding and leveling. That's all Farmville is. But it has this unbelievably seductive grasp on people. And why? Because you can put pretty things into your farm that make you feel good and make the things look nice and it makes you smile. That's why people play Farmville, because it makes people smile when they play it. Look at education. NASA has already approved a response to an RFP to build something called Project White Card. This is going to be NASA's MMO. What they're doing is they're going to kids and saying, hey, if you had to go to the moon or you had to go to the at Governor State, when you talk about the country version of Sims, it is absolutely not. It is absolutely not at all anything like The Sims. It is at the basic level. It is a time management tool. You plant things, they will die unless you get back to them after they've fully grown. And so you plant stuff, you wait 2 days, you go back in, you click on harvest, you replow, and you plant. There is no growth of the character or story arc of anything. It is the worst part of games in the mass multiplayer space. We hate, but it's wildly successful in this context because it's social. You can invite your friends. You can gift things to other people's farms. You can help each other out. You can do all these little social-based things. Again, it's that reaching out to other people that makes it such a compelling thing to do. Now, going back to this slide real quickly, so NASA's doing an MMO that's saying, hey, kids, if you had to live on the moon or you had to live on Mars, here's all the tools. How would you build it? What are the things that you would do? Right? So they're actually going to be mining the minds of the public to say, how would we go about solving these problems, right? The next graphic on the top to the right is actually a massive multiplayer game that IBM had put together that allowed people to build. The Earth is basically dying. You build sustainable technologies and eco-friendly technologies to breathe life back into the Earth. Down here you have two other examples of the one on the left is a kids-based MMO that's all education, everything from geology to simple mathematics to English. And then the game on the left is actually a game aimed at the Japanese market that teaches them English. And you play it on your iPhone, you play it in the browser, and you can play it together, and you can do all these sorts of things. So we use these gameplay frameworks to explore and to educate, the populace, and also to educate ourselves. Now, the question is, can we also look at this stuff as art? And this kind of brings me to towards the end of the presentation here, and I just wanted to tell you about some of the things I'm working on. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, I'm actually listed as a guest curator at the Smithsonian's American Museum of Art. Let's see, wait a minute. I have my kids water real plants and vegetables that they can eat. I absolutely think that's awesome that we do that. And, we do that with our kids too, not necessarily vegetables, but, do planting and actually help in the yard and things like that. Just because we can do one doesn't mean we can't do the other, right? It's an important thing to learn that, it's cool to be able to go plant stuff, then go out and pick a tomato and put it in the salad at night. That's awesome, and you did that. It's something you made. But it doesn't detract or in any way debase the entertainment or enjoyment of doing this in Farmville. And some people, think about people who are not physically able to do those sorts of things, right? So these are things that we have to take into consideration when we look at those sorts of platforms and say, are they really valuable? Well, you know what? I'll give you a great personal example. Watching my father-in-law bowl with his granddaughter using the Wii, which is something they really can't do together physically in real life, is an amazing gift. And there is no other technology medium on the planet that could provide that sense of connection for that particular activity than a video game, right? So we have to look at these case by case. It doesn't mean we throw it all out, but we use it, again, as I said before, to our best use, right? We understand the best use case and always strive for that. Now, as I said, again, I'm a guest curator at the American Art Museum. I've been actually commissioned